The confetti cannons were loaded. Pink or blue powder sat waiting in pristine white tubes, like tiny promises of joy about to explode across our perfectly manicured backyard. Fairy lights twinkled against the twilight sky, casting a warm glow over the faces of everyone I loved most in this world. 47 people had gathered to celebrate this moment with us, friends from college, co-workers, family members who'd driven hours just to be here. The photographer I'd hired crouched behind the rose bushes, camera poised to capture what I believed would be the most magical moment of my life. I should have known something was wrong when Jeffrey wouldn't meet my eyes. Standing there in my flowing white maternity dress, the one I'd spent 3 hours shopping for because I wanted to look radiant, glowing, worthy of this beautiful life growing inside me, I felt the first whisper of unease. My husband of 3 years stood beside me, his jaw set in that familiar hard line I'd been seeing more and more lately. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be ours. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" I whispered, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. The crowd hushed as we stepped toward the cannons. My mother beamed from the front row, her phone already recording. Jeffrey's parents sat rigidly beside her, their smiles too sharp, too knowing. I should have recognized that look, the same one they'd worn at our wedding when they'd whispered about how fast everything was happening. "Before we find out whether we're having a son or daughter," Jeffrey announced, his voice carrying across the yard with practiced ease, "I have something else to share." My heart fluttered with anticipation. Was this the moment he'd finally tell everyone how excited he was? For weeks, I'd been carrying the weight of his silence, his distance, the way he'd started working late every single night. But maybe this was his way of making up for it. Maybe. He reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a gift. Not for a speech written on crumpled paper. For a manila envelope. The world tilted sideways as he handed it to me, his smile cold and calculating. "Congratulations, Susan. You're having a baby. And I'm having my freedom." The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my trembling hands. Around us, confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone's phone clattered to the ground. The photographer's camera clicked rapidly, capturing every horrifying second of my world imploding. "Jeffrey, what?" My voice cracked, barely audible. "Divorce papers," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I figured since we were already gathering everyone together for big announcements, why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the evening breeze seemed to hold its breath. I stared at the envelope, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Not while his smirk grew wider, feeding off my humiliation like some sort of emotional vampire. "This is calculated," the rational part of my brain whispered. "This isn't impulse. This is cruelty." "I don't understand," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sure you do." Jeffrey's voice was honey-sweet and poison-sharp. "You're smart, Susan. You've always been the smart one, right? So I'm sure you can figure it out." That's when I saw them, the faces in the crowd that weren't shocked. His mother, dabbing at fake tears with a tissue she'd clearly prepared in advance. His brother Kevin, recording everything on his phone with barely concealed glee. My best friend Melissa, standing near the back, her expression guilty and satisfied. The pieces started clicking into place with sickening clarity. The late nights at work that started 3 months ago, right around the time I told him about the pregnancy. The way Melissa had been asking strange questions about our marriage, about our finances, about whether I'd ever thought about what I'd do if Jeffrey wasn't in the picture. His mother's comment last week about how some people just shouldn't be mothers when she thought I was out of earshot. The way he'd insisted on this gender reveal party when I'd wanted something small and intimate. He hadn't just planned to leave me. He'd planned to destroy me. Publicly. Completely. Turn what should have been one of the happiest moments of my life into a spectacle of humiliation that would follow me forever. The manila envelope crinkled in my grip as my hand shook with rage that was quickly overwhelming the shock. Around me, I could hear the whispers starting. "Oh my God, did he really just..." At their baby's gender reveal? That's so cruel. I always thought there was something off about him. That poor girl. Poor girl. That's what they saw when they looked at me. A victim. A woman so naive and trusting that her own husband could orchestrate her public humiliation and she'd just stand there and take it. Jeffrey was still talking, his voice carrying across the yard like he was giving a toast. I know this might seem shocking to some of you, but Susan and I have grown apart. I've realized I'm not ready for the responsibility of fatherhood, and it wouldn't be fair to either of us to continue pretending. Pretending. Like our entire marriage had been an act. Like the way he'd held me when I'd had morning sickness, rubbing my back and promising everything would be okay, had been pretending. Like the way he'd cried, actually cried, when we'd heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time, had been pretending. Like the house we'd bought together, the nursery we'd started planning, the names we'd whispered to each other in the dark, had all been pretending. I've already made arrangements for Susan's immediate needs, he continued, and I could hear the practiced rehearsal in his tone. She'll be well taken care of during this transition. Transition. Like dissolving our marriage was a corporate restructuring. My cousin Stephen, a lawyer, stepped forward from the crowd. Jeffrey, this is neither the time nor the place. Actually, Stephen, the timing is perfect. Jeffrey's smile was all teeth, no warmth. See, Susan's been so focused on this party, on making everything perfect, that she hasn't been paying attention to other things. Important things. Legal things. Ice formed in my veins. What legal things? Stephen's voice had shifted into attorney mode. Jeffrey's laugh was sharp and bitter. Well, for instance, she probably doesn't know that I've already frozen our joint accounts. Or that I've been documenting her erratic behavior these past few months. The mood swings, the paranoia, the way she's been isolating herself from friends and family. My mouth fell open. What are you talking about? I haven't. The way she accused my mother of trying to sabotage our marriage. The way she's been suspicious of Melissa for no reason. The way she's been obsessing over this baby to an unhealthy degree. Each word was a blade, carefully sharpened and precisely aimed. He wasn't just leaving me, he was painting me as unstable. Unfit. He was going for custody. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about him not wanting to be a father. This was about him wanting to control the narrative, control me, control our child. Make himself look like the rational, responsible parent and me like the crazy, emotional woman who couldn't be trusted with a baby. You're lying, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Am I? He pulled out his phone, swiping to what looked like a voice recording app. Should I play some of the conversations I've recorded? The ones where you're screaming at me about imaginary affairs? The ones where you're sobbing uncontrollably about things that never happened? My blood turned to ice water. Those conversations, they had happened. But not the way he was making them sound. I'd been crying because he'd been gaslighting me for months, making me question my own sanity. I'd been upset because I'd found suspicious texts on his phone, because he'd been lying about where he was spending his evenings, because I'd caught him in lie after lie after lie. But to anyone listening to just the audio, without context. This is insane, I whispered. Is it? Or is it the sound of a woman having a complete mental breakdown while pregnant? The kind of breakdown that makes a judge question whether she should have unsupervised access to a newborn? The crowd was shifting uncomfortably now. Some people were starting to leave, clearly not wanting to be part of this anymore. Others were watching with the sick fascination of people witnessing a car crash. My mother pushed through the crowd, her face pale. Susan, honey, maybe we should go inside and... No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Sharper than I'd heard my own voice in months. Something was shifting inside me. The shock was wearing off, and underneath it was something harder. Something that had been building for months as I'd endured his subtle cruelties, his manipulations, his systematic campaign to make me doubt myself. No, Mom. I think everyone should hear this. Jeffrey's eyebrows shot up. Susan, you're making a scene. You're proving my point about your emotional instability. Am I? I looked around at the faces staring at us, some sympathetic, some uncomfortable, some openly curious. Or am I finally done letting you make me feel crazy? I turned to face the crowd, my voice growing stronger with each word. For those of you who don't know the full story, let me fill you in. 3 months ago, when I told Jeffrey I was pregnant, he started staying late at work. Every night. Sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. Jeffrey's jaw tightened. Susan, don't. When I asked him about it, he said I was being paranoid. When I found texts from someone named M at midnight talking about our future together, he said it was a coworker discussing a project. I pulled out my own phone, my hands steadier now than they'd been in weeks. When I took screenshots of those texts, he accused me of violating his privacy and being a crazy, jealous wife. You're having an episode, Jeffrey said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. When I started having panic attacks because my husband was treating me like a stranger in my own home, he started recording them. Not to help me, not to understand what was wrong, but to use against me. The crowd was murmuring now, and the sound wasn't sympathetic to Jeffrey anymore. And when I finally figured out who M was, I looked directly at Melissa, my former best friend, who had gone pale as paper. He didn't just cheat on me. He cheated on me with my best friend. The woman I trusted with everything. The woman who helped me plan this party. Melissa opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The woman who's been asking me about our finances, about whether I had a will, about what would happen to the baby if something happened to me. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Susan, you're being ridiculous, Jeffrey said, but his voice was strained now. You're having pregnancy-induced paranoia. Am I? I turned back to him, and for the first time in months, I felt powerful. In control. Then you won't mind if I share some things I've discovered. I reached into my purse, the little beaded clutch I'd chosen so carefully for tonight, and pulled out a different envelope. This one was thick, official-looking, and sealed with the letterhead of Patterson, Wright & Associates, the most prestigious law firm in the city. Jeffrey's face went ashen. What is that? Well, since we're sharing legal documents at our baby's gender reveal, I thought I'd join the fun. I held up the envelope, making sure everyone could see it. This is from the private investigator I hired 6 weeks ago. The silence that followed was absolute. See, Jeffrey, you're right that I'm smart. Smart enough to know that a man who's planning to leave his pregnant wife and fight for custody doesn't just wing it. He plans. He documents. He builds a case. I broke the seal on the envelope, my movements deliberate and calm. And smart enough to know that if someone's building a case against me, I should probably build one against him. Jeffrey lunged forward as if to grab the papers, but Stephen stepped between us, his expression grim. Don't worry, honey, I said, my voice sickeningly sweet. I'm not going to read all 47 pages. Just the highlights. I pulled out the top sheet, holding it high enough that the front rows could see the official letterhead and photographs clipped to the corner. Let's see. Here's a photo of you and Melissa at the Marriott downtown on October 15th. That was the night you said you were working late on the Morrison account. Melissa made a strangled sound and started pushing toward the back of the crowd. And here's one from October 23rd, November 2nd. November 18th. I fanned out the photographs like playing cards. Funny how often the Morrison account required overnight attention at various hotels around the city. Jeffrey's face had gone from pale to green. You had no right. I had every right. I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child. And you've been systematically trying to destroy my mental health so you could take our baby away from me. I pulled out another sheet. But here's where it gets really interesting. The financial records. Jeffrey actually staggered backward. Turns out, you haven't just been cheating on me, Jeffrey. You've been stealing from me. From us. From our baby. I looked up at the crowd, many of whom were now openly staring in shock. For those who don't know, I inherited a substantial trust fund from my grandmother when we got married. Jeffrey was never officially added to the account, but I gave him access because I trusted him. The words were coming easier now, each revelation feeling like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Over the past 6 months, he's been systematically transferring money from that account into a private account with Melissa's name on it. $67,000, to be exact. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see people pulling out their phones, some probably to call their own lawyers, others probably to post about this train wreck on social media. The plan, according to the investigator's report, was to take as much as possible before filing for divorce, then claim I was mentally unstable and unfit to care for our child. He would get custody, child support from my remaining assets, and his new girlfriend would get to play mommy to my baby. Jeffrey was shaking now, all pretense of control abandoned. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone, opening the voice recording app with movements that mirrored his from earlier. See, I've been recording our conversations too. The difference is, I recorded them legally, with proper documentation and timestamps. I hit play. Jeffrey's voice filled the yard, crystal clear. She's completely lost it since she got pregnant. Half the time she doesn't even make sense. No judge is going to give custody to someone that unstable. And once the baby's born, we won't have to deal with her at all. The kid will be better off with us anyway. Melissa's voice followed. Are you sure we can make it stick? What if she fights it? With what money? By the time I'm done, she won't have enough left to pay for a decent lawyer. And who's going to believe her over me? I'm the stable, employed one. She's the crazy pregnant lady who can't handle reality. The recording continued for several more seconds, laying out their plan in devastating detail, before I stopped it. The silence that followed was profound. Even the evening birds seemed to have stopped singing. Jeffrey looked like he was going to be sick. You can't use that. It's illegal to record someone without consent. Actually, Stephen's voice cut through the yard. In this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And since Susan was part of every conversation, she had every legal right to record them. I smiled, feeling something close to joy for the first time in months. My lawyer, and yes, Jeffrey, I hired my own lawyer 3 weeks ago, assures me that these recordings, combined with the financial evidence and documentation of your affair, will make our divorce very straightforward. I placed one hand on my rounded belly, feeling my daughter shift and kick as if she approved of what was happening. Oh, and speaking of our daughter, yes, everyone, it's a girl. I have one more announcement. The crowd leaned forward collectively, as if afraid to miss whatever was coming next. I've already filed for legal separation and exclusive use of our marital home. The locks were changed this afternoon. Jeffrey's belongings are currently in storage, the bill for which will be deducted from the money he stole from my trust fund. Jeffrey's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I've also filed for emergency temporary custody, citing documented evidence of financial fraud, adultery, and emotional abuse. The hearing is next Tuesday. I turned to look at Melissa, who was now crying openly. And Melissa, since you're so interested in my family's financial situation, you'll be happy to know that my lawyer will be in touch about returning the money Jeffrey gave you. All of it. With interest. The crowd was buzzing now, a mix of shocked whispers and what sounded almost like approval. Support? But the best part, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, is that I'm not done. I reached into my purse one more time and pulled out a small, white envelope. See, while you two were planning my destruction, I was planning my future. And my daughter's future. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is an offer letter. From Randall, Wright and Associates, yes, the same firm that hired my investigator. Turns out, they were impressed with my attention to detail and my ability to gather evidence. They've offered me a position as a legal assistant, with full benefits and a salary that's actually higher than what Jeffrey makes at his prestigious marketing firm. The paper fluttered in the evening breeze as I held it up. I start Monday. Full maternity leave, paid, with a guarantee that my position will be held for up to a year if I need it. Jeffrey was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Like the woman he'd systematically tried to break down and control had somehow transformed into someone he didn't recognize. You see, Jeffrey, you made one critical mistake. You assumed that because you made me doubt myself, I was actually weak. You assumed that because you made me cry, you had broken me. You assumed that because I loved you, I was stupid. I took a step closer to him, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire yard. But loving someone who doesn't deserve it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And surviving someone who tries to destroy you doesn't make you a victim. It makes you a warrior. I handed him back his divorce papers without breaking eye contact. I won't be needing these. My lawyer has already filed. You'll be served properly, through legal channels, like a civilized person. Because unlike you, I don't need to humiliate someone to feel powerful. The crowd erupted in a mix of applause and shocked conversation. I could see phones everywhere now, people recording, texting, calling others to share what they'd just witnessed. My mother appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. Honey, I'm so proud of you. Stephen was grinning like he'd just won the case of his career. Susan, that was incredible. But I wasn't done yet. I walked over to the confetti cannons, still loaded and waiting. The gender reveal that had been forgotten in the chaos of revelations and revenge. You know what? I called out, my voice carrying over the conversations. We came here to celebrate new life. To celebrate hope. To celebrate the future. I picked up one of the cannons, feeling its weight in my hands. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I aimed the cannon toward the sky and pulled the trigger. Pink confetti exploded across the twilight, a shower of rose-colored paper hearts and stars falling like blessing over the chaos of my old life. It's a girl. I shouted, my voice full of genuine joy for the first time in months. I'm having a daughter, and she's going to grow up knowing that women don't have to accept cruelty disguised as love. The crowd cheered, actually cheered, as pink confetti settled on their hair and shoulders like fairy dust. Jeffrey stood frozen in the middle of it all, covered in pink paper, his mouth still hanging open, his divorce papers crumpled in his fist. Melissa had disappeared entirely, probably running for her car. His parents were hastily gathering their things, clearly wanting to distance themselves from the wreckage of their son's reputation. But I wasn't watching them anymore. I was watching my mother cry happy tears. I was watching Stephen laugh and shake his head in amazement. I was watching my coworkers look at me with new respect, like they were seeing me clearly for the first time. I was watching my future unfold in front of me, bright and wide and full of possibilities I'd never imagined when I was small and scared and convinced I needed someone else to make me whole. As the last of the confetti fell around us, I placed both hands on my belly and felt my daughter kick, strong and fierce and unafraid. Welcome to the world, little one, I whispered. It's going to be beautiful. I walked toward the house, my house now, leaving Jeffrey standing alone in the ruins of his perfect plan, surrounded by pink confetti and the scattered pieces of a marriage he'd destroyed and a future he'd never deserve. Behind me, I could hear the party slowly resuming. People were staying, I realized. They were celebrating with me, celebrating for me, celebrating the fact that sometimes justice looks like a pregnant woman in a white dress teaching the world that underestimating someone's strength is the fastest way to discover just how powerful they really are. I paused at the back door and looked over my shoulder one last time. Jeffrey was still standing there, divorce papers in his hand, pink confetti in his hair, looking like a man who'd played chess while his opponent was playing a completely different game. And he was finally learning what it felt like to lose. I smiled, placed my hand on the door handle, and stepped across the threshold into my new life. The best revenge, I thought, wasn't destroying him. It was becoming everything he'd tried to convince me I could never be. Strong. Independent. Unbreakable. And absolutely, completely free.